Okay, I should be recording now. I'm not giving this presentation to anyone. Sadly, no one has turned up, but that's okay. So, welcome to week 16. Ooh, big week 16. So today I'm doing the rundown of coursework 2, which is your next coursework. So, I'm recording this on Wednesday the 13th. You should be viewing it on Thursday the 14th or Friday the 15th, around about then. So you should be about ready to either hand in or have handed in your coursework 1. So without further ado, you did it, you crazy son of a female dog, you did it. Yeah, well done everyone for either having your coursework ready to submit or having already submitted your coursework. So well done, well done. You did great. So what do I want from this particular session? Well, what I want is for you to understand the new coursework, obviously, have an idea of what you want to do for said coursework, and just take a bit of time for yourself before starting something new. So yeah, just relax. Don't worry too much about it at this stage. If you ever need to reference anything at all, when I say reference, I mean go back to this lecture and listen to it, watch it again to make sure that you know what you're doing, then that's absolutely fine. So, what is coursework 2? Coursework 2 is an essay. End of presentation, goodbye. No, it's a 1,000 word essay, so that does not include references or quotes, and a maximum of 1,500 words. It's about a brand or online presence, a campaign, an organization, a movement that has a multi-platform presence. So what that means is that it has a website, or it has a Facebook, a Twitter, a LinkedIn, an Instagram. It has a dedicated app. So as long as your business, campaign, organization, movement, it has these various things, and then you can write about them. I recommend that it has at least 2 of the aforementioned, but it can be anything. Really, it's very open to interpretation, open to what you want to do. We'll use our previous knowledge of other courseworks and kind of like how you've learned about social media to analyze how these various different companies, brands, organizations, campaigns, and movements have managed their online digital profile and how they interact with the public. So you will be assessed on your ability to research and write in an academic style and use an essay format. Okay, how are you assessed? So you're going to be marked on your ability to talk about social networking site usage regarding the brand that you chose. You must use academic sources to support your argument. By making observations of your own and finding sources to back this up, the information that you display must be clear and coherent. We'll discuss effective techniques in class, and we'll look at report writing in coming lectures and labs. You would probably benefit from taking note in these coming classes to help with your report. So I'm, going to be, I know that I said I wasn't going to, I've tried to include a lot more examples and a lot more memes and a lot more visual examples of stuff, especially when it comes to the social media stuff, but I still recommend that you take notes on key media theories and any of the information that I talk about, just because I want you to be able to put it in your own words and be able to process that yourself. There's a lot of words there, but don't worry, I'm reading it to you. It's like listening to an audiobook. It's your responsibility to show what you're capable of independently planning, researching, and organizing, as well as your ability to write. Because this essay is an academic essay, you must follow the following conventions. You need to have at least 3 academic sources. So that means books from the reading list or articles or journal pieces. The reading list, in case you've forgotten, is on Blackboard under reading list or under learning material, coursework 2 resources, and oh no, under learning material, and then there's just reading list, and there's also recommended watching list if you don't like reading. I don't recommend that you reference any of the watching list, but you just use the information there to inform your reading in order to reference. Use legitimate and reliable sources to gather information. We'll go through the legitimate and reliable and unreliable and academic and non-academic later on in this presentation. Use professional and academic language, so don't use slang, don't use abbreviations or colloquialisms, and don't use the first person, I, we, me, and my. When I say don't use slang, don't use your, try and avoid using your local dialect, so don't write like you're doing a Scottish tweet, and don't use abbreviations, so don't use do not. Don't use any colloquialisms where you're using expressions that are regional. So I wouldn't say cob, I would say bread roll, or I wouldn't say jitty or jetty, I'd say alleyway. Lay out your report like that of a report, which we'll cover later. Use good examples and back up your arguments with verifiable information. So that means don't just make profound claims. If you say anything in your essay, make sure that you assign a source to it, or at least you have evidence to back this up. So don't just be saying, Jack went up the hill, and obviously you're not going to be talking about Jack going up a hill, but say Jack went up the hill, and then leave it at that. Where is your example? Where's your quote? Where's your source? Where's your reference? Where did you get that information from? Is it reliable? I need to know these things. So in summary, 1,000-word brand analysis essay. The deadline is the 31st, is the 30th of April 2021, which is week 31. Remember, we talked about Murray's Law or Sod's Law, which is anything that can go wrong will go wrong. So don't leave it to the last minute. I worked this out the other day. If you do 50 words, you can do 2 days where you do 50 words, and that will take you 15 weeks. Is that right? Is that right? No, no, it'll take you 10 weeks. Don't know, 100 words a day, 100 words a week. Yeah, 10 times 100 is 1,000. Don't know why I said 15. Oh no, if 15 weeks, and then if you have an additional 5 weeks of 2 days of working to review and make sure your sources are correct, that kind of works out. So yeah, you can do this in 15 weeks or so. That's the time given. Less than 15 weeks. Yeah, you've got time. You can take it very slow on this one. Therefore, there's no reason why you couldn't submit well before the deadline. If you are having computer problems, computer issues where you can't type stuff out, try and find solutions to that. Or if you're having any problems like, IT issues, let me know straight away. The sooner that you let me know, the sooner I can help you, that sort of thing. When it comes to extensions, I'm not expecting to give anyone an extension because, you've got a lot of time to do this, and I've already set it now. Previously, it was set at week 8. This is the second week in, the first week, in fact, of the new coursework. So you've got quite a lot of time to do this. So what's the essay format? The formatting and the layout of the document should be formatted like so. The title page, that doesn't count towards the word count. Contents page, again, doesn't count towards the word count. The introduction, 10% of the word count. 3 to 5 numbered sections, 80% of the word count. 3, 4, and 5 sections of equal 270 words, or 200 and you can have 3, 4, or 5 sections of 270, 200, or 160 words per section, respectively. It's quite not that many words per section. Conclusion, about 10% of your word count. References, again, this doesn't add towards your word count. You must follow the Coursework 2 essay template on Blackboard. We'll go through that towards the end. Other details, so the submission needs to be in Times New Roman or Calibri, that's how you say it. It needs to be in size 10 I heard my my headset turn off then. It needs to be in size 10, 11 or 12 size font. So you've got those three options there. It needs to be right-hand aligned and a single column of text. I don't want to see split columns. You need to have it single line spaced of 1.5 of 1 or 1.5 line spacing. Anything other than this will lose you serious marks. So here we have some lorem ipsum. That's how it should be looking, and that's how it's not supposed to be looking. They're not the same picture. Okay, so the title page. So the title page, or more accurately, the title page is the first page of the essay. It is a collection of information about the essay to help anyone reading it know what it's about. This is available in the Coursework 2 template. So on Blackboard, under Learning Materials, under Coursework 2 Help, you'll find this. All you have to do is fill out the highlighted information. So change the following: student name to your name, the P number to your P number. All of this information is the same. So you're at De Montfort University in the area of visual imaging and sonic arts, in the computer engineering and media section, in the Leicester Media School, doing media production BSc honours. The module code is the module name, which is Tech 1002, the module title, Social Media and Innovation. This is valued at 50% of the module grade at level 4, so your first years, so this is a level 4, second year, level 5, third year, level 6, and so on. The program leader is Mr. Simon Walsh. The module leader is me, Mr. Roy Mark Weller. Your tutor is also me, Mr. Roy Mark Weller. This is where you put your essay title. The work requirement is 1,000 words. The written word count is all of the sections that are part of your word count. So these here, that is your written word count. So that should be approximately 1,000 words. The total word count is everything. So all of this, basically the one that appears in the bottom left-hand corner when you're writing. The deadline, that's obviously the deadline and how you're going to submit it. So coming up with a title like the essay title is a bit tricky, but you're not married to an essay title, so you don't have to stick with it. But it does need to summarize your essay so that people know what your essay is about. For example, you can have something like Dove Soap, a history of controversy and counteraction through customer relations online. Or you could have something like 131 years of Nintendo, approach to social media interaction and branding online. So a little bit catchy, but also needs to be informative and let people know what the title, what the essay is going to be about. A contents page, so this is your second section of your essay. So a contents page directs the reader to the specific sections that they want. Usually this is done through numbered sections, so as you can see here, it goes from 1 to 5. It lets people find the section that they're looking for easily. We can use the auto contents function on Word. I've already set this up in the template, but if you want to know how to do it yourself, then if you go to Learning Material, Coursework 2 Resources, and there is adding a contents page to Word. Let me just go through the stuff that I have on, bless you. Let me just go through the stuff that I have on Blackboard. Infinite Blackboard, off you go. Okay, so there's announcements. So you start off with announcements. If you go to Learning Material, Coursework 2 Resources, also I have added, sorry, go back to Learning Material. I've also added an academic calendar because some people are confused about when the year starts and ends. We have the Coursework 2 template, Coursework 2 brief, Harvard referencing guide, so that's how you use Harvard referencing, adding citations to Word, adding a contents page to Word, interactive essay format helper, I'll get into that in a bit, and a reliable sources chart. So all of these are here. I recommend you go through them in your own time and just have a read. I highly, highly recommend that you do so. There's no other way to express how highly I wish for you to have a look at those. Anyway, so back to numbered sections, bit of a diverge there, but we can achieve that just using the auto contents function in Word. Ideally, we want to create subheadings that are auto numbered. So we have our, why won't it let me draw? Draw, please. Yeah, so we have our first heading, which is 1.0. If we have a subheading of the first heading, if we have a division of that, that's 1.1. If we also have another division of second division of this subheading, if the first division of the second subheading, so if 1.2 has subdivisions within it, you'd have 1.2.1 or 1.2.2 if it's the second one. We then have a third division of the subheading, so we'd go back to 1.3 if it's a division of 1.0. We then have the second heading where we're moving on to a different subject entirely, so it's 2.1. So here we have, I think this is from my master's dissertation, we have the abstract, which is sort of the same as the introduction. It's basically just a summary of the entire essay. We then have the introduction. We then have introductions to other concepts, so it's 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, 2.4, 2.5. Under other concepts, obviously I wanted to subdivide it, so I then put 2.5.1 and 2.5.2, then moving on to the justification for research, so that then goes back to 2.6. Moving on to a completely different subject like methodology and design, it goes on to 3.1, methodology versus method versus methodology, and then methodology in total, so 3.1 and 3.2 entirely. Just quickly, the difference between method and methodology. Method is the act of doing, methodology is the study of the act of doing. So when you say methodology, what you actually mean is how you've studied method in order to come up with the method. That makes sense. Method is just how you do it. Methodology is how you think about doing it. Obviously, lots of different ethical questions. Yeah, it gets complicated really quick, but that's basically what you should be doing. Here we obviously have the method, phase one of the method, the measurement tools, and then it goes into, obviously I've got 4 subdivisions there. I think I had a total of 5 subdivisions, but subdivisions as you go, using numbered titles. That's a little bit complicated. We'll go through that later as well. Bear with me just a second. Oh, okay, so the introduction, as I said before, the introduction literally introduces your essay to anyone who wants to, say, skim read it or read the intro to get a feel of if it's suitable for them to continue reading it, if it's about their topic, if it is actually how the title describes it. You need to be brief and concise when it comes to your introduction, and it should be about 10% of your word count for your essay. For your introduction, the following should probably be covered. So your essay topic, the meaning of each section that will be covered, so basically you summarize each section, the main finding and summing up of your conclusion. So the numbered sections, the best way to produce the numbered sections of your essay is to break down your essay into the sections that you want to cover and write a sentence before summarizing. And write a sentence summarizing what you want to talk about before you start writing. You should have between 3 and 5 numbered sections and as many subheadings as you need to clearly convey your argument, as long as you don't overshoot the word count, obviously. So your subheading should, although your subheadings are new sections, they do need to be related to the heading, and they are under and need to show a clear structure in relation to the topic. So you, like we saw here, you can't just say that this heading is method and then you talk about your findings, because your method is not part of the findings, and you can't introduce the essay and then talk about the conclusion, if that makes sense, in a subheading. It's just not how we do things. So your essay should be between 3,000 and 6,000 words, maybe 3,001 words. We'll talk about the 10% rule in a sec. This is why you should obviously, this is why you should write a sentence to summarize your headings before you start writing. Is because you'll get to the second paragraph and you go, oh, I've already covered what I said I was covering now, and the headings don't quite match. So write a sentence just summarizing what you're going to talk about, and don't be afraid to just start new subheadings and start new sections, because that's how we create an essay effectively. I had a point. So here's a brief overview of perhaps the format of your sections. This is also in the form of an Inkle writer, if you want to have a look at that. This just guides you through. Looks a little bit complicated, but don't worry. So the introduction section, you can then move on to background and contextualization. You can then either talk about social media practices, or you can just go straight on to campaign. If you talk about social media practices, you can then talk about social media channels, or you can go on to the campaign. If you talk about background, you can then talk about controversy, and then how that controversy was remedied, and then you can talk about social media channels. You can go from straight to background to social media channels, and then depending on what you've picked, you probably want to talk about a few social media channels, anywhere from 2 to 4, depending on how you've structured your essay, and then move on to a conclusion. So there's an interactive version of this that's available on Blackboard, or if you're clicking through this essay, these slides, you can access that. So here's some help with your numbered sections. A lot of words, but I'm just going to talk you through them. So background and contextualization. You want to talk about the history of the brand. What is important to know about the brand to understand their campaign and social media? Is there any brand differences or similarities to others developed by other brands and that offer similar products? When you talk about social media practice, what is good and what is bad social media practice? Critically discuss the brand's approach to what the academic literature describes as good and bad practice. When we say the academic literature, I expect you to read a little bit of the reading list. That's all part of it. When we talk about the campaign, what is the campaign about, or what is the movement that you're talking about? What is the campaign? What is the movement? What is the brand? What is the company about? What is the product that you're discussing about? What is important to know about this campaign? Is this campaign different or similar to others by brands that produce a similar product? If there's a controversy, what caused that controversy to occur? Was it intentional? How was there a miscommunication? How were people upset by this, and how did it damage the business, if at all? Remedy, if there was a controversy, how did the brand remedy their controversy? Did they improve their image online through the use of social media? How did they do this, and how do people feel about the brand now? When we talk about social media channels, talk about their use of a social media channel. Why do they use this particular social media channel? Do they use the same social media channels as other brands? Do they use conventions that are considered good social media practice, or do they just kind of do their own thing? So gives you a lot to talk about. Finally, we have a conclusion. So the collusion. The conclusion is an opportunity to summarize your findings. What points were good that you think are good about your essay, and what are the flaws of the campaign or about your writing? Were you critical? Were you too soft on it? I don't know. It's an opportunity for you to suggest improvements to the campaign, or emphasize good practice or bad practice that the campaign, the brand, or the company involved. In the conclusion, you do have some freedom to express opinion, as long as you don't go into the first person or go off on a tangent, and the comments are a result of the research that you present in the essay, and that you're not just talking about how much you love the brand, etc. So your conclusion will have to be something about 100 to 150 words, so about 10% of your essay. So referencing, this is a list of citations that you have made in your writing at the end of your essay. Your references don't contribute towards the word count. You do need to use DMU Harvard referencing style. You will need at least 3 to 5 different updated relevant academic sources to support your work. So this is books, this is articles published on academic journals, additional sources such as websites, reports, etc. These don't count as the minimum number of sources, only the academic ones do. So what is the rule of 10%? I've said there's a rule of 10%. What's the rule of 10%? When you're given a writing assignment like this, it's hard to kind of know how much to write if you're given a fixed word count. So the 10% rule solves this very easily. So your word count for this particular essay is 1,000 words. 10% of 1,000 is 100. To get a range of what we should aim for, we take away 10 and add 10 to our recommended word count. So that gives us a range of 900 to 1,001 words. This gives us a good range to aim for and a nice cushion if we are under or over the word count. This could apply to, say, a 40,000 word essay, where the range would then be 36,000 to 44,000 in the extreme. So for this essay, I'm giving you a fixed 1,000 word word count. You should be aiming for 900 to 1,100. You should probably be clear with whoever's setting you the assignment if they're applying the rule of 10% or if they're not. I am for my particular essay, but obviously other academic staff might say differently. So finding sources, you can find sources in a variety of places. So the reading list, for example, is a good sources. Search for news sources using Google Scholar and then find the full version on the DMU website. You should probably do a demo, Roy. That's right, I should. I should probably have got Google Scholar open, but that's just me being a big silly. Right, I shall now share my screen. Infinite Blackboard. Infinite Blackboard. Say we want to learn about social media. So let's type in social, if I can spell properly, social media practice. Social media practice theory. There's this book called Media Society. Let me just check, my mic's still working? Yes. Media Society, World, Social Theories and Digital Media Practice. That seems great. I'm going to click on that. Sorry, this is through Google Scholar. Oh, okay. 6 to 7 pages are not shown. So although it gives us a lot of information, we are not able to get the full version of this, but I want to read it in its entirety. You probably won't want to read it in its entirety, but say the important quote that I'm trying to find from this book is in those pages that are previewed. So we'd go over to, say, the DMU library website, which is there. All these links are available on Blackboard. So I've just copied the name of the book. I'm going to paste it into the search for the library. Oh, look, there it is. So because I can't view the whole thing through Google Scholar, but I'm able to find it easily, I can view the full text online as an ebook. Log in using my uni details. I agree to that. Close that. Okay, so I can download the book as a PDF, or I can download a specific chapter, or I can read it online. It's up to you how you want to. Here are all the subsections and it breaks it down for you. You can also use the DMU library website to search for other things. So if I want, say, just journal articles, someone's done a review paper of this particular book, so those can also be quite interesting. So if we just put in social media search, it'll come up with lots of stuff. Okay, so there's a lot of things. I just want journal articles because journal articles are usually quite reliable when it comes to being critical. So I'm going to click journal articles, and it's just going to my microphone wasn't working. Sam, you're in the chat. When was the last thing you heard? No? Okay, never mind. So what I was saying was that you can search for journal articles. You can view for the full journal articles online. You can then filter by journal articles or journal articles that are published in the last 12 months. You can then download the PDF, or I recommend that you just view them online. This resource is opened in a new tab, so you open it in a new window. If you want referencing information, all your referencing information is here if you need it. Huh. Okay, here we go. This is all the information that you would need for references. So there's your issue, and there's your volume. There's the publishing date. There's the name. There's the author. There's the author's information. And here's the full article if you want it. I'm going to go back to my presentation. That way I'm not going to embarrass myself by just talking into thin air. Where was I? There we go. Referencing. Finding sources even. What about Wikipedia? We have one every single year. There's at least one person in the class of, say, 100, or in your case, 92, where someone thinks that it's okay just to copy and paste the entirety of the Wikipedia page about that company or that controversy into their essay. So Wikipedia is not necessarily a reliable source. I have this meme here, teachers. Wikipedia isn't a reliable source since anyone can write anything in it, and then it's like there's hundreds of fact checkers. Okay, it's very hard to vandalize a Wikipedia page because there are moderators and there's fact checkers and you have to show sources, kind of like an essay. But do not copy directly from Wikipedia under any circumstances. I can't stress this enough. There are so many people who think they can get away with it just by rewording it. No, you can't. If you want to use Wikipedia, find the sources that that Wikipedia article talks about and read that section of that source. So if we just go to Wikipedia, let me find okay. Oh, I'm gonna turn my mic on and off so that it doesn't cut out when I give this demo. Sharing my screen now. Okay, go to Wikipedia. Let's go to Simon P. Chaser. I have no idea who this is. Okay, so I shouldn't just copy and paste that. Oh, okay. So look, these little things here, they're sources. The numbers that you see in a Wikipedia article, they're sources. There was one essay that I marked last year where they had kept in the sources like this. They'd got the little brackets and and I'm going, you clearly copied this. And they went, no, I haven't. And I went, why does it have the sources like it does in Wikipedia? And said, I don't know. And went, well, it's been copied. Make sure you don't submit that for your actual essay. So here it tells you the exact source. And oh look, there's a link that we can click and it shows us the book. And then we could obviously find that through the library website and we could then read that. Isn't that cool? And it shows us here the book, and we could search for this particular book or this particular article. In fact, it's not an article actually, it's a book, sorry. We could look for that specific page and then we could find that quote. Isn't that great? And you wouldn't have to copy and paste from Wikipedia. You could obviously read this to get an idea of what it's talking about, but you wouldn't copy and paste it directly. Does that make sense? Now I have to get back to the page I was on. So yeah, again, if you want to use Wikipedia, use the sources that Wikipedia found. If you've copied any text and changed it, Turnitin, which is the way in which we review your work, it automatically finds whether you've copied something from the internet, even if you've changed the wording slightly, and it's an academic fence which could lead to you being kicked out of uni, but we'll talk about that later. When I say later, I mean in a few slides. So, what is an academic source? So an academic source is journal articles, conference papers. These are the best well-known academic sources. Books are good, but depending on the topic, they might be a little bit outdated. So if you're talking about incandescent light bulbs, you're not going to, for the sake of this essay, you're going to be talking about social media. But if you're talking about incandescent light bulbs, because that technology has been surpassed by, say, LEDs, if you buy a book on it or you read a book on it, it's quite likely that that information is going to be as relevant as it's ever going to be. But something like social media, where we've seen phenomenal change in the last 10 years or so, if you read a book on social media that is, say, 25 years old, that's probably not going to be the most up to date, because media that is social didn't really exist until the early 2000s. So if you're reading a book from 1996 that's 25 years old, it's probably not going to be the best when it comes to talking about social networking. Although there will be information about rudimentary social networks, it's probably not going to be the best. So academic journals that are recently published are your best. So like I showed going through the library website, and you can do the same through Google Scholar, where you, excuse me, where you can filter by date. That's probably your best opportunity to find academic journals and conference papers that are up to date. So statistic reports are important, but try to check the report itself. Not just someone commenting on it. So if you're finding statistics, make sure that you're not just finding someone's comment on a statistical report, you find the actual statistics yourself. Newspapers and magazines, they can also be used, but academic sources are preferred. So newspapers and magazines aren't academic, but they can be used to supplement your blog. You can use blogs as sources, but as far as we're aware, make sure that they're from respectable writers and you've checked out the writer, because as you've probably found out, you can make a blog yourself and you can write anything you want. And then if you found someone else's blog and they'd written anything they wanted and not supported it with academic arguments, that could be absolute tosh. It could be absolute, rubbish. So make sure that you're checking that this writer is actually, reliable. They have a degree. They're a professor or they're a doctor in their field. Make sure that they're perhaps associated with the university, etc. So how to identify an academic versus a non-academic source. So an academic source is usually written by a professional in their field. It's usually reviewed by multiple people in the case of, say, a book or, say, a journal article, where it's had to be reviewed by multiple people. The books had to be reviewed by an editor. It's published by an established institution, so it's had to go through, say, a university or a publishing company. It includes the writer's names and the credentials. So at the start of the paper, it will say they are a doctor in so-and-so, or it has been reviewed by so many people who has several degrees in X, Y, and Z that makes them a professional in their field. Excuse me while I take a drink. So in terms of its publishing, it has an accurate time and date. So it will tell you when it was submitted for review, when it was published for the first time, when it was republished. It will give you lots of information about the times and dates. It uses a formal language and it has a structure to it. So it has numbered sections like we talked about. The sources and references can be traced accurately. So if you look at their sources at the bottom of their excuse me, if you look at the sources at the bottom of their article or at the bottom of their journal piece or of their book, you can find that source yourself if you Google it, or if you go through the library website and try and find that exact title, then you can find that and you can read that for yourself. It's usually unbiased and objective and has little political leaning, although we tend to produce products that match our own ideology. I caught my microphone slipping. Since it's been through unbiased, objective, and little political leaning, since it's been through several editors, several people to get it published, it's likely that any political bias has been stripped away or reduced to a minimum, provided that it's not objective. So if it's non-academic, it could have been written by anyone, not necessarily a professor or a professional in that field. Published quickly with little to no review, so you'll find spelling errors, grammatical errors. You'll find that it's quite unsubstantial. Published on a blog or a personal page. Like, don't be quoting people's opinions on Twitter, unless of course they're experts in their field, in which case that's okay. It uses a pseudonym, a username, a handle, or a screen name, like blogging expert 231. If they're not using their real name, then there's probably a reason why they're not using their real name, because it's unsubstantiated. They don't want to be associated with those unsubstantiated claims. There's an unclear publishing date. Obviously, we live in a digital age where publishing dates are not so important anymore and they could be changed. But if it's unclear about when a website was published, then it's probably not the most reliable, because you then can't associate it with a date in which it's published, and so you can't confirm whether it's a recent thing or if it's at the start of Web 2.0 in the mid 2000s. It's informal, it uses colloquialisms, it uses slang. Same way that I'm asking you to not use colloquialisms or slang. If they're using informal language, it's unlikely that they're trying to present an academic piece. Incorrect spelling, punctuation, grammar. If they're making lots of errors, it obviously hasn't been reviewed. There hasn't been people to reread it for them. So that tells you something about the fact that it's probably not an academic piece. Includes opinion, biased, or has a political leaning. That shows that, again, it hasn't been reviewed by multiple people, it hasn't been read, and the political bias hasn't been subdued, or it hasn't been verified by examples. Okay, here's a reliability versus a non-reliability chart. This is created by Vanessa Otero. You can follow her on Twitter. She is a media academic. She produces these charts, which is the media bias chart. I've been using this for years. Basically, it has mostly American news in quotation mark sources. So it has stuff like the New York Times, NBC. It has the BBC there, has the Daily Mail, which you'll recognise. These are news outlets, by the way. You also have stuff like InfoWars, which they have considered to be right-leaning. We also have stuff like the Palmer Report, which they consider to be left-leaning. Have stuff like Vice, Vox, which are popular YouTube channels and news outlets. I think they do have the Guardian in here somewhere. I can't quite see it. If Forbes, which you probably want to stay in this sort of band here. Anything left or right of this, you have a political leaning, and so we are showing that there is less reliability. You also probably want to stay in this sort of band as well. So you probably want to stay top center here as much as possible. If you are using left or right-leaning information, obviously not all news outlets are on here, make sure that you have a good reason to do so. The CNN I can't see the Guardian, but the Guardian is on there somewhere. I think the Guardian resides around about here. Oh, actually, oh, there it is. Close, no cigar. But yeah, if you're reading stuff, you probably want to use stuff that's around here. Preferably center and preferably top. But it's up to you, as long as you have good justification for using them. Like I say, not everything will be around here. You have some just have some nonsense stuff around here that's just, just bump, I guess, is the way to describe it. So what is citing, what is referencing, and what is sourcing? I'm going to use these. Some of them are used interchangeably. So citing is a term for noting down a shorthand of the author and the date of a referenced work. So a reference is the full name, the source, and the information at the bottom of the document that then links to a citation. So you make a citation. Citation is the shorthand that you use in the text to show that you've used that reference. The reference is then at the bottom, which is the full information, and the source is the name of the original document that the information came from. So a source is what you read on the library website, like a book. You then reference that in your document at the bottom, where you include all the information about that. You then have a citation, which is where you link it to the references in the document. That will become clear as you do more and more reading and more writing. When to cite? There's a lot of words here and there's a lot of examples here. So when we quote someone else's work, so that would be, for example, in the text, always using short sentences in academic writing. And then what we do is we then say, Weller, 2021, and that was in page 40 of whatever document I was reading. So that's not within the quotations of the text, and it is between the final quotation, is between the final quotation and the full stop. So this includes the page number of where the quote was found for a website, not web documents. So if it's found on a website, then we just say page 1 because there's only one page of a web page. But if it's any other document, say a web document, a PDF, or a book or a journal article, we reference what page it was on. If there's only one page, then we just say page 1. When else do we reference? We reference when we paraphrase someone else's idea or a conclusion that we have drawn from someone else's work. So in the text, we would say something like, it is important to use short sentences and accurate punctuation. So the term is important to use short sentences is an idea that we took from Weller, 2021, who said, always use short sentences in academic writing. So that's directly what someone said. We have paraphrased it and said it is important to use short sentences. And so because that idea is not our own, we've then referenced Weller 2021. But because we're paraphrasing, but we're just using the idea, we don't have to use quotation marks and we don't have to reference what page it came from. Notice again that we have put it between the last letter, we've put a space between the last letter and the beginning of a bracket, said Weller 2021, close bracket, no page number because we're paraphrasing, and then full stop. So the quotation that we want to use for this particular sentence is in the sentence itself. So in text, we could also name the author in the sentence. So we would say Weller 2021 suggests the use of short sentences. So we would, there's a specific function for this in Word, which I'll show you in a second, suggests that we use short sentences. So so we're then using Weller as part of the text rather than just as a quotation at the end. So there's no need to have another reference at the end because we've already used it at the start. Also, when we use images, graphs, charts, figures, or videos, or any other media that is not our own, or we have modified or remade to better display the information or our own if the source may be confusing. So we have here some stuff that I used for my dissertation. This is it. So this is a chart that was used, it says figure 4, but then I used it, I remade it, so figure 1, sorry, and then this is the source for where I found the information. We then also have something that I read, and then I created my own chart based off the information, but then I referenced myself because I created that of my own accord. So here we have some referencing styles. So again, through the Coursework 2 resources, you can also find information based on the DMU referencing style. So for books, you want to include the author and the year, the title, and the edition. If it's not the first, you don't have to put first edition if you don't want to. The place of publication and the publisher. So there are some examples. So we have Clark S, 2011, textile design, London, Lawrence King. A journal article, so we have the authors, the year, the title of the article, the title of the journal, the volume number, the part number, the issue, or the month that it was published, the pages that you used, so you'd use P or PP. Here we have the full citation, so it was Maimon and Browning, 2021, adolescence, violent victimization in the neighborhood, situation on contextual determinants, British Journal of Criminology. So that is then the volume number, and then that is the issue number. And that is because it's a section in a journal article, there are multiple different articles within this journal that we would give the pages. So that would be page 808 to 833. Then if we're doing a web page or any other electronic source, we put the author, the year, the title of the document, the type of source, the organization responsible, and the available from the web address and the date that we accessed it. So for the example, we have the NHS 2016 mobile phone safety. It was an online source from the NHS. It's available on that website, and then it was accessed on the 28th of the 6th, 2016. Again, the full referencing guide is on learning material and Harvard referencing guide. So referencing examples in Harvard referencing. So a citation in the text, example of an article, article inside of a book would look like that. An example of a book reference, an example of a web reference. They would, sorry, so that's the book reference. That's how the reference looks. We have an example of a book reference. That's how the reference for that book looks. We then have an example of a web reference where there is no author to it and there is no date associated with it. These are unadvisable, but you can still use them. So there is an example of how that would look. Plagiarism. So this is a big one, and I do have to talk about it. In academic writing, there are a few intellectual offences more impacting than passing off someone else's content of your own. I don't know what I meant by that, but an intellectual offence is passing off someone else's work as your own, also known as plagiarism. So it's okay to take a leaf from a previous author's research or opinions, so you're allowed to read something and then you're allowed to rewrite it in your own words, but you have to reference where that idea came from. Make sure that the author and the contributors of a study or a piece of writing are rightfully cited so that you've cited them correctly. An academic offence is when you have been found to plagiarize, which means to pass off writing as your own. This can lead to marks being docked, like you can have any section where you've plagiarized just removed and not marked, or if this is your first year, so you won't be kicked out of uni. But if you are a serial offender, by that I mean you do it multiple times over multiple essays, and you use a lot of people's work as your own, you can just be kicked out of uni. So sometimes they give you second chances, and it all depends on how serious your academic offence is. But don't worry about it at this stage, as long as you reference everything correctly. There's no reason why you won't pass, and there's no reason why you would plagiarize, because you guys are all smart. So if you're thinking about plagiarizing, just don't. Turnitin can easily tell where information came from, including a database of all papers from other students, published and unpublished work, and the whole internet. It knows where it came from. You cannot cheat the system. Do not get an essay writing service. They have a very specific style that can be picked up on very easily. It's only 1,000 words. You don't need an essay writing service. These essay writing services, they charge an extortionate amount for something that you can do in a few weeks. Very, very, slowly at your own pace. And I'm here to give you all the help you need, so there's no need. The only way to get around the system is to write things out in your own words and to reference them correctly. If you don't reference things correctly, or you just make up references, then Turnitin also picks up on that. There's a lot of things that Turnitin picks it up on, like sometimes it will come back as like a 90% plagiarism rating, and you have to pick through and figure out which ones are good and which ones are bad. There's no way of cheating the system, basically. You have to write things in your own word and to reference them. So some common shortcomings that people try to make up the word count without actually doing much work. Overquotation, so inserting quotes, inserting direct quotes to make up large chunks of paragraphs. You should only use quotes when it's entirely necessary. Try and paraphrase these major chunks of text in the document, just to make sure that you're not using large blocks of quotes. Just paraphrase it and write it in your own words, and then just reference it. Don't repeat the content by stating something, by repeating a quote, or by repeating what the quote has just said. It's not necessary. The quote is there. I've understood it. You might want to explain a few details that might not be clear, like some specific language, but other than that, just don't repeat what the quote's saying. Going over the word count. So if you go over the word count, try to use short sentences, rephrase your sentences by using more short and concise sentences. Repetition, so by repeating information that you might seem like a good idea to quickly bloat your essay, but it will reduce your marks. So if I'm reading a paragraph and then later you've got the same paragraph again, I'm going to go, well, you're just like self-plagiarizing effectively. I'm just going to ignore something, and then you'll blow the word count, and then you get a lower mark. So revise your work. I know it's hard to reread your work. Perhaps get someone in your house or a family member to read your work and point out errors. I already talked about putting in Comic Sans, not necessarily pointing out errors, but perhaps highlighting sections which are repetition or that need rephrasing or are a bit long or a bit winded. It's all up to you how you want to do it. Spaghetti, so SPG, so spelling, punctuation, and grammar. You are marked on spelling, punctuation, and grammar for this particular coursework. So for spelling, avoid using contractions, cliches, slang, or shortened spellings. Punctuation, use commas. Don't be afraid to use full stops. Long sentences are not better, and full stops on a citation go outside of the bracket. So like I said, if you use a quotation, it goes inside of the sentence that you're using a reference or a citation for. Grammar, avoid using first person, avoid using gendered language like he or she, try use they. No rhetorical questions, and don't use etc. This is a lazy finisher of a sentence. So don't say, oh, and they used computers, etc. If you've got the time to say etc., you can list off all the various things that you want to say instead of just saying etc. That's better than just using etc. Finally, I'll give you some top tips. This has been a longer than usual lecture. I've used the full hour to its full extent, and yet there is still more that I wish to cover, but I had to cut this short. We'll cover it in labs and lectures. Great leaders inspire greatness in others. Easy is the path to wisdom for those not blinded by ego. A plan is only as good as those who see it through. The best confidence builder is experience. Trust in your friends, and they'll have reason to trust in you. You hold on to friends by keeping your heart a little softer than your head. Fail with honor rather than succeed by fraud. That one digs a bit deep, doesn't it? There's my contact information. Also, if you can tell me where these quotes are from without Googling them, I'll be very impressed. So here's my contact information if you need to contact me. I've already run over long enough, so I'm just going to be quiet now. Have a good day, have a good week, and just look after yourself. Bye.